Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final installment of our Black Women in Publishing Summer Series. We are so happy to have you here. For those of you who have been with us for our 4-week journey, welcome back. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome, welcome. And we hope that you've enjoyed these past few weeks with our very distinguished Black women who are doing the thing in publishing. My name is Donna Hill. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Black Literature and the Associate Professor of English and World Languages in the English Department of Medgar Evers College. So we are honored to have all of you joining us today to celebrate the achievements of these amazing Black women. Your presence enriches our collective voice and strengthens our community. We will have questions and answer sessions following my discussion with Monique. And you can put your questions in the chat and we will answer as many of them as possible. So first and foremost, before we even begin, in the light of transparency, I've known Monique since Monique was an assistant to an assistant. That's how far back we go, like a long time. She's been my editor, my mentor, and to see her having risen up the ranks of publishing to where she is today, it just gives me thrills. And I am so very proud of her. And she is a testament of what you can do when you put your mind to it. So there's a path for all of us. So that's my little fangirl moment. Let me introduce the one that you need to know today. So Monique Patterson is Vice President and Editorial Director of Bramble. The quote, "All great literature is one of two stories. A man goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town," by Leo Tolstoy, is one of her favorite quotes because it immediately sets to mind all the possibilities of a fantastic story. Finding books and authors that reach across the breadth of our experiences as humans is important to her. Publishing a wide array of genre and genre-bending fiction and a select amount of nonfiction allows Monique to explore all of those experiences. Some of her upcoming titles are Blackthorn by New York Times bestselling author J.T. Gessinger, Crown of War and Shadow by #1 New York Times bestselling author J.R. Ward, and The Poet Empress by Sean Tao. That is such a minute bit of information about Monique. So we are going to plow her with questions today to find out how in the world you got to where you are. And you can talk to us about, your journey. So what I would like to do in this conversation is sort of split it up into two sections, like really opening up about your road through publishing. How did you start? What were some of the successes, some of the obstacles in particular for you as a young Black woman coming up in a predominantly white male industry? And then we will take the questions towards, what a lot of the people present today were interested in. What are you publishing? What are trends? How do I get to Monique if I have a book that I want to present? So let's get started. Welcome, Monique. And start us off. How did you get to be vice president and editorial director?
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me here, Donna. It is always great to see you. It is a great time whenever I get to work with you again in any capacity. And I'm really honored to be a part of this whole speaker series from the Center of Black Literature. And excited to talk to everyone here. So the journey. I've been in publishing now, like
Yes.
you know how long I've been here, but I would say it's been about 25 years now in the business. I actually started right out of college, literally. I got a job at Avon Books before I even graduated. And I started a week after I graduated from college. So jumping feet first into everything. And it was baptism by fire. And I loved it right from the start. The only thing I knew about publishing in the beginning was that I wanted to be near books. I didn't know anything else. I was just like, that's where they make the books, that's where I want to be. So I really had a chance to dive in. And my boss at the time, Carrie Farron, was a great mentor to me. So I learned a lot, and I was one who I wanted to know everything. And she really allowed me the opportunity to learn as much as possible, but also to get into actually being an acquiring editor, which is very key to if that's going to be your path. So I think it was probably like 6 months after I started at Avon is when I acquired my first book, which at the time was, I think, a Western romance. And that was, that kind of kicked everything off. By that point, I had been bitten by the bug. I knew I loved publishing. I loved everything about it, working with the authors, working with the books, covers, everything that had to do with the whole publication process. And then I remember looking around the Avon list and saying, I mean, we were publishing Beverly Jenkins, legend. We were publishing Ebony Snow, legend. But that was about it. So I spoke to Carrie and I was like, it'd be great if we had more Black romance. And she was like, absolutely. And so I set about, I didn't know what at the time, what was going to be the African American romance program um, at Avon. And again, that was a great process because I was being mentored along the way and having the chance to bring in more Black authors, back then. Um, and then at some point, I was uh, Jennifer Endelin at St. Martin's Press reached out to me, and we were talking about some opportunities at St. Martin's where basically I would be allowed to do even more of what I wanted to do. So I joined the St. Martin's Press team, and I was there for about 20, 21 years. So that's a long time. And I think that's actually pretty unique in this business. Not so much that people don't stay in the business, but there usually is, like, you advance usually by moving, to different houses. But I had a really great career at St. Martin's, and I was able to kind of feed my own ambitions. Okay, sorry. Of course, this is the beauty of doing things at home. Your cats will just have a fight. Um, so anyway, it was a really great opportunity to expand and also to constantly have conversations about not only the kind of books that I wanted to do, but also who I wanted to be at different points in my career. And because I received mentorship, it's always been very important to me to be able to provide that for anyone who works with me or even kind of comes to me wanting mentorship. Because that's how I was able to grow. That's how I was able to get where I wanted to be, was through mentorship. So I did a lot of career growth at St. Mark's Press. And then Davey at TPG, the Tor Publishing Group, reached out to me. And in 2023, the beginning of 2023, I came over to the Tor Publishing Group to launch Bramble, which is our romantic imprint. And that was basically the next step in kind of like my dream career. And it really has been my dream career. Um, you talked about like how you navigate. And it is, it can be tricky. I think that having clarity about who you want to be and what you want to do and where you want to do it is very important, because that can always keep your feet on the right path. I find that I have found that and still find that regardless of what is happening, who's in the room, or the challenges that I'm facing, it's always very clear to me. I have a very clear, I know what I want. So my goal is always to try and navigate towards that. And that includes dealing with, any politics within the organization. That includes meeting the needs of the authors and the agents, my own needs, the people, the other departments. So I think that's something I've had to learn along the way. And really having a strategic mind helps. It's not so much that you have to be some expert at it, because none of us are experts right out the gate, but I think that you do have to be curious, and I think that you have to be aware of what is needed, on multiple fronts, and figuring out how to navigate all of that, while kind of staying true to what it is that you want to accomplish. I personally love that kind of thing. I love, thinking. I love kind of that strategy. And I think it's been a really big part of what has guided me through my career, along with navigating my opportunities in the best way possible. So
Okay, and here you are,
here I am.
having navigated those waters. So what are where you are now? Is Tor under Macmillan?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Because I was like,
Yes.
where'd she go? How'd she get there? What is happening?
Yes. Yeah. So Macmillan is the parent company, and St. Martin's Press is a company within Macmillan, and the Tor Publishing Group is another publishing company within Macmillan.
Right. Okay. All right. So now I got it. So what are trends? Talk to us about trends.
My favorite topic. I say that because so trends, the way I always describe them is, I think the simplest way to describe them is what's hot, right? What's currently hot is usually what people mean when they're talking about trends. So one of the hot trends right now is romantasy, right?
Mm,
So, but I tend not to think about trends when I'm publishing. It's more because trends can come and go. There are trends that can last for years, right? In terms of, and when I say last, I'm talking about that they're at the top of mm, what's popular at the moment, right? There are lots of things that are selling all at the same time, but some of them are just more visible and hitting more lists than other things. So I'll give you an example. I used to go to conferences, and there was a certain point when people would ask me about historical romance or anything, and they would say, I heard this is dead, and I heard that's dead. And I was like, nothing's dead. I'm like, it's just that I was like, these things are still selling, and actually selling well, but you have, you have suspense that's doing, it's like the hottest thing, and everybody sees that on the list all the time, or you see romantasy and that's on the top of the list. So I think it's more about understanding the market more so than trying to write to trends, because by the time you even write to a trend, it can be over, right?
mm,
So I think it's more about understanding your particular area that you want to write in. So I am personally, I'm obsessed with, I love commercial fiction, and I especially love romantic fiction. And I know the romance market, you know, if there's few things in this world that I can say with like absolute certainty. That's one thing I can say with absolute certainty. Not because I'm oh so smart about it, but because I love it, and I am always like nose first into it. The authors, what they're writing, what's selling. Um, I'm constantly curious. I want to know what covers are working. I want to know what people are talking about, and I'm also a fan. I'm a huge fan of it. So I harness both of those things, and that is what drives my knowledge of the genre, is my absolute love of it, and a kind of, I would dare say, even my obsession with it. And I think that that is the thing that is more, that will guide you more so than paying attention to any trend, is like really just knowing that genre. knowing what works, knowing what readers really want, because it's so rich. There's so much that the readers respond to. And I think as long as you're tapping into that, you're going to find your place and you don't have to worry about, oh, is this hot right now? Because you could
Mhm.
be the one who makes it hot, right? So I
Right.
think those are the most important things.
Mhm, mhm. So, and in terms of what you're looking at now, I know that you're a devout, romance fan, reader, you know, uh, um, what are you looking for right now? And what is your submission process for those readers out there, writers out there?
So mainly, okay, well at this point, I I'm still receiving quite a few submissions. But because I'm more heavily involved in the publishing process, like actually running Bramble and working with my colleagues, Will Hinton and Claire Eddy, who are also editorial directors overseeing the other imprints at TPG. I'm actually not editing directly as much anymore because I need to be more of a publisher. I need to basically oversee the entire list. And I'm very involved in that, like every step of every process with the books that we're publishing. I see everything, every single cover, every single piece of copy, not in a micromanaging way, but just to make sure that in terms of what we're putting out, it's always at the highest level of quality, that we're being consistent with how we want to, um, put the books out into the world. So I'm always looking at everything, every stenciled edge we do, every sprayed edge we do, I'm looking at everything. And so that takes up, more time. And then I also have, full staff of people. So there's Erica Sang and Susan Barnes and Mal Frazier, and Troy Jackson, and plus some people on the who typically buy more on the TPG side, but also do romance, like Ali Fisher and Lindsay Hall and Stephanie, who are acquiring for the list. So they're doing at this point the bulk of the acquisitions, but I still get a lot of things in, and I will share with the editor I think it's appropriate for. Um, so the submission process for us is most of it comes in via an agent. We look at agented submissions. But there's also times when we meet people at like conferences, etc. Um, and we, look for projects that way as well. Um, I do not really look at unsolicited material at this time. So it's usually by invitation or by via agent.
Mhm. Okay, right. So, um, with so much going on in the world right now,
Mm,
with so much of all that people of color are doing being erased, misinformed, et
mm,
cetera, et cetera. We know that literature is sort of like the anchor that can hold us together well into the future if we can get the materials out there, right? So, how important is diversity and inclusivity in publishing, particularly in the representation of Black women's voices and stories? And how do you see yourself championing those issues, going forward, especially in this climate?
mhm. Uh, that is a great question. I don't know how to answer that in a short way, so I'm just gonna dive
The long way.
in. um, you're absolutely right. I mean, I agree. Art is a thing that we need to hold on to, that we need to lean into. And reading is so important right now. If it wasn't important, as I'm sure you've all heard, if it wasn't important, if books weren't important, they would not be banning them. So
Exactly.
as an organization, we are part of a lot of the fights that are going on right now to overturn book banning. And that's going to keep going on until we stop it, right? As far as diversity and inclusion, as an organization, it's still one of the most important things. in terms of belonging and who we want at the company, who we want to be and who we actually are. And for me, I'm a Black woman in publishing, so I've always cared about that kind of thing. I've always cared about opportunity, you know, and you have front seat sometimes to where opportunity is lacking and where it is abundant, you know. I will say that I love my job and I have loved every place that I have worked, but publishing is publishing and it's still very white. And it is, in some areas, it's a bit less challenging. And when I say a bit less challenging, I really mean a bit, right? Um, and in so I haven't, I'll say it this way. I haven't been in a conversation in years where I've had to explain that Black people read. And I'm not joking. I actually had that comment when I first started in the business. Somebody really was surprised that Black people read. Like, so that's kind of that's kind of like the where we were. And I'm like, okay, I'm not being asked that anymore, you know. But having to explain things culturally is still exhausting. It is not nearly as much as I've had to, but it still is exhausting to explain things culturally. Even like some of the smallest things, like words that we use within our culture and having to explain that. And it's just like, I'm like, yeah, you don't have to explain your stuff to me. I know yours, you know? And so that is, and then there still are
September, October, November, December.
the problem of access is still challenging, even if it becomes easier within the organization. It still can be challenging how you get some booksellers to get on board in the same way, because you're constantly having to explain and put things almost in the context sometimes of white authors that they understand, etc. So that'll never stop being exhausting. It's kind of a thing that I accept that I have to do because I know what I want. But I would say it is not as easy as it should be, even today, to get more Black and brown people through the door. There's still a lot of work to do, and it's still a challenge, sometimes in ways that I can't, like, if you told me to explain it, I would have to sit down, because you know how it's the challenge of the things that you just kind of is built into your day, like you just experience it throughout the course of your day, all of like the microaggressions and and like things like that, like things that aren't even deliberate, things that are just kind of baked into the system, things that are happening even when you are dealing with people who are well-intentioned and self-aware and making the effort to be better and are better about it, you're still operating within the structure that was not built for you. And it was not built for your access. So it shows up in all these like really subtle ways. It's usually not somebody saying something rude directly to your face, right? It's just sometimes like you just realize at some point you're like, why is this so hard? And you're like, this is hard because this is the way it's been constructed. It's like every other system that we exist within in the United States, where you feel how hard it is, even if you can't pinpoint exactly why, it's because that's how it's been built. And, kind of the work of deconstructing that is constant, you know. Um, So I mean, I could keep going on about that. I say all of that to kind of describe what that's like and what the work is like. And I think everybody here in your life, there's some part of your life where you know exactly what that is and what that feels like, even if it's not something directly related to publishing. Um, But at the same time, I'm like, I don't care. I know what I want. And I know what I want to try and make happen. And I know the doors that I want to see opened. So that's what I do or try to do every day.
As much as possible. Yeah. I know it has to be challenging. And as you were saying the word, I was mouthing it, microaggressions. We have to deal with that on so many different levels, like all the time. And it is very tiresome. I do want to take because what you were talking about, I was going to ask also in terms of how easy or difficult is it to get Black books sold and on the shelves with quality shelf space and not relegated to the back or just spines out.
Yeah.
Is that still as difficult as it was? What are some of those challenges that you're still facing? And then I want to go to some of the questions that we have.
Yeah, I think it's still challenging. I don't have as much challenges acquiring the books.
Right.
I don't have as many challenges. Like at this point, if I'm like, this is good, I have built up enough trust, and enough of a quality scorecard to prove that I'm smart about what I bring to the table and what I think can work for the company. The challenge can come with, like you said, getting it on the shelf, and even still some reader perception about whether or not a Black story is, oh, it's only for Black people. And I'm like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? It's a story
Mm.
about human beings, and even if it is about something that's set deep within, within emphasizing the culture, whatever the culture is, whatever the Black culture is, it doesn't prevent us from watching anything else. Like, I'm like, are you Italian? Can you only are is Italian stuff only for Italians and Scottish stuff only for, I'm like, no, you don't think that, So
Right.
there still is that, Um, so it still gets to be a challenge. And the reason that ends up being a challenge for you on the front end is because it's not enough to be able to get people through the door. You also have to, it is a business, so it has to perform at a certain level for you to continue doing it, right? And
Right.
when you don't have the same, how do I want to say this? The same opportunity once it leaves your desk as the editor and leaves and goes out into the world, it's harder. Like it just is harder. And I'm constantly trying to figure out how to overcome any of those challenges even before it gets out the door. So there are times when it does feel like it is more work for me to publish a Black author than it is to publish anybody else. And I say that because it can be like there's just all this stuff that I have to plan for and think about to overcome any resistance that it might meet, regardless of how ridiculous I think it might be. And
What is some of the pushback that you get in terms of, you have this great Black book,
mhm,
an established author, I know it's going to do well, but here comes the buts. What are some of those challenges that you come up against?
it's not direct. It's not
Mhm.
direct. It's um well, can we look at this cover again? We look at this
Mm.
cover again. We're thinking maybe it needs to be like brighter colors, maybe brighter colors. And you're like, because, and then they show you a bunch of other Black books that have bright colors. And I was like, okay, so because all these other Black books had bright colors, whether they're in this genre or not, you want bright colors on the book. Whether,
Mhm.
and so it's things like that, oh, well, we'll take more copies. Like we should just really look at this and we should really look at that. And they sound reasonable, but you know what I mean? Like the context. And it honestly is not even that I feel like somebody is trying to be slick.
Mhm.
It is, I'm like, I need you to decolonize your mind. I need you to you know, because what you're talking about does not matter. But this is how you think and have been taught to think, and everybody else thinks it. And so here we are having some of the same conversations with a slightly different slant to it than we've been having for 25 years, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really often isn't anything that's like really
Overt.
direct or overt.
Yeah.
It's other things. And sometimes it's nothing at all, you know? It just is, you're not even really getting that much feedback that you could say it's one thing or another, you know. Now I will say that that's even with across the board, you know, with all books. I'm not going to sit here and be like hearing nothing is nefarious in some kind of way. We don't hear things about every single book, and some books you're just never going to know why it works, you know. We do postmortems on books all the time, so that's not a signal of anything.
Mhm.
But if you're in the business long enough, you kind of know how to read you learn how to read the room, you know, a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it can be things that are over. And like I said, they're not things that are deliberately nefarious. They're not deliberately mean. They're not, you know, you're just sometimes you hear these things and you're like, "Ah," and you'll have somebody who is like genuinely coming to you with like they're genuinely coming to you with a question, but you're like, I don't know if I can teach you why that's not the thing you should ask or a way you should think, you know.
Mhm.
So it's more that. Um and it's kind of like you have to the more you know about the business, the more you get to see when that's the case and when it's not. So
Mhm.
I hope hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's work. Basically, it's work.
It's work.
So I want to take some questions from audience because they're piling up now. First, one of the early questions, because you talked about this earlier about, sometimes if it's not work coming through an agent or
Mm.
somebody that, you ran into and it's like, oh, I have this book for you, Monique. I might have a book for you. I'm just saying. What, if any, conferences do you recommend that aspiring writers or, writers trying to get their work out should attend specifically for Black women, if you know of any, or
So
conferences in general?
yeah, I think I mean the conference landscape has changed a lot. Um So I think any conference that caters specifically to the area in which you write is a good one to be at. Not just for
Mm,
the access to the editors, but also to the networking among the authors, right? So like Thriller Fest, I think is a good one to be at for anybody who writes suspense and thrillers and mystery and things that are very adjacent to that. I think that is a good space. That is a good networking space to be in.
mhm,
As far as like romance is concerned, um, I think there's a couple of ones. There's Stimulant, there's a Polycon, and there's one more that I can't remember right now off the top of my head that are good ones to be at in terms of access to editors and networking with authors. And then there's Worldcon, which is if you're in the fantasy and science fiction space or anything that's very adjacent to it, that is a good one to be at. Um, I think being at events like this, like anything that the Center for Black Literature is doing, is be at those events, you know, whether they're
mhm.
virtual or they're and I am blinking, Donnie, so you're gonna have to help me out.
What,
What
Romance
is
Slam Jam?
no, yeah, yeah. So yes, in Romance Slam Jam, and also there is Curtis's
Oh, the National Book Club Conference.
yes, National Book Club Conference, which is usually is it at
You
beginning of
just
July
had
or
it. It was like a
yeah,
couple of weeks ago.
in the
Yeah, it
and
was
like so
just a
like
couple of weeks.
okay. So
Mm,
there those are really good events to be at, you know, as well. Um and I'm sure I'm missing, some, so feel free to add some in. But those are some of the ones that I would think off the top of my head. But really is like you want to be in those spaces where the networking is going to be useful for you. If you don't write science fiction and fantasy, there's no reason to go to those conferences. Unless you're just curious. You can do whatever you want. But in terms of the bang for your buck, that's where I put my focus.
Okay, thank you. Monica asks, it seems like book retailers are dwindling. When I go to bookstores, I see the same books. Are there any initiatives to increase visibility of Black authors? That's a trick question.
Constantly. Constantly. There definitely actually are more bookstores, indie bookstores that have been opening up, which is great. The fight for book space, the fight to get books on, as many accounts and as widely as possible is something that you're taking into consideration for every single book, right? What you're asking the accounts to take, and you have to be strategic about it. The goal is to have a really great sell through. So you come back to them and say, look at how well you did. You need to take more this time, so that you're growing an author book over book. The challenges that I spoke about in terms of getting more Black books out there, or more books by people of color out there, remain the same. They're better, but it's like when I say better, you hear the question mark I put on the end of it, like I'm like better, I don't mean amazing. I mean not as hard in some ways as it was like when I first started, the work is constant. I think if you talk to any Black editor, again, the challenge sometimes isn't the acquisition, right? Sometimes it's what happens after acquisition if you can make, books work, because your successes allow you to do more. And as an editor, you sometimes find yourself carefully choosing, because you're trying to open the door more and more for the next project that's coming after it, while also knowing that it's the challenges that you're facing. Because I think we all know, if we look around the world right now, we're still dealing with a lot of the same kind of thinking. Some of it is horribly overt, and some of it is people who don't think that they think that way, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of the people on the inside, I would say yes, especially speaking for Black editors, we're always that's always the goal,
And there's such a small, Black editors just in general, it's just like a small part of this enormous machine. And especially, editors and people in higher positions, they can actually make decisions. That's part of it as well, because even as high up as you are in your space, it's like, you still have the people saying, well, what about that cover? Maybe we should look at it again, well, maybe instead of 10,000, we'll just do 5,000 and see how it does. Those types of things that you're still constantly having to deal with. And back to the whole, publishing and the difficulty about out there, Danielle asked, how can booksellers, particularly independent and Black-owned stores, best work with or create partnerships with publishers to combat some of these difficulties that you've described? Is there an avenue for that?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as like publishers are concerned, this is my take and my view. I can't speak for like every experience that everyone's having, but the more accounts that we could sell books into, the better, right? And especially if an account is like, I can do really well with this kind of book, we want to work with that, you know? So I would say that publishers want to work with, want to work with bookstores. The more places that we've gone through periods where we've lost booksellers, right? That hurts everything and everyone. So we want to work with booksellers. So anybody who's new, publishers want to work with you. They do want to work with you. Everybody has like different terms, like the terms and discounts and all this other stuff. I don't know about that stuff. That stuff that has to be kind of worked out with them. But they definitely want to work with more bookstores so that we have more places to sell in our books. I think if you're an independent bookseller, if it is also it's a plus, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, because like I said, we're more interested in, you taking copies and being able to support the books within your store. But if you're a New York Times reporting independent store, that's great too, So I do not know what that process is like to become a New York Times reporting bookstore as an indie. But it is something I would advise, looking into. Like I said, it's not going to hurt your chances with working with a bookseller with a publisher if you don't, but I think it's a plus.
Okay. Thank you. Esmeralda says, yes, translating one's work is a whole other thing. Which you were talking about earlier, like, having to explain stuff that you feel like you shouldn't have to explain. How far should a writer go to cross over, though? Does a writer need to try to cross over to get published? She realizes this is a difficult question, but we're talking about art. So, and
Well, I guess
you also talked earlier on about knowing who you are, right? And sort of standing in your own truth. And so how much are you willing to give up just to be published?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that too. It's kind of the same answer for both of these, but I'm going to cover, because when you say crossover, I think I know what you mean, but there's two ways in which that you could be talking about that. You could be saying crossover, meaning crossing over to a wider audience, or you could be saying crossover from like your genre into, crossover fiction, wherever you put your work, you're talking about crossing over to another genre or something like that. And I think that the answer is the same. I think first of all, you have to write as who you are, and I think it's more important to pursue the kind of story that you want to tell, more so than being concerned with like, oh, can I get more white readers or Latino readers, or or anything like that. I think you end up going awry when you do that, because first of all, there is no group of people who are a monolith, right? So I love romance. My best friend in the entire world, we played Barbie dolls with each other when we were kids. I never recommend a romance to her because I know that is not her thing. She's not going. The few times that she has read a romance, she has called me up and said, "What is this?" So, it's more about like, okay, do you want to reach romance fans? Do you want to reach mystery fans? Do you want to reach the thriller audience? Do you want to reach that? And is that something that you're excited about? Is that something that you really, really want to pursue? If you try to write a thriller because you think that's hot, and you don't really like thrillers, or it's really not your thing, or you really don't know it that well, it's going to show. I'm going to read it and I'm going to know that this is not your thing. I probably, at this point in my career, I'll probably be able to tell in 5 pages, So to me, there really is no point in trying to fit yourself into something that doesn't feel like it's for you. Because as readers, we're going to be able to tell. As editors, we're going to be able to tell. There's no point, and also you're going to be miserable and you're not going to want to make a career out of that. It's going to fall apart. Like, I think it's a recipe for unhappiness. So regardless, I think it's more important to try and understand your audience, who you're trying to reach, You know, what genre are you in? What pocket are you sitting in? And what is that? What are those people? The people who are crazy about those kind of books, what do they want? Right. And I have said this for years to authors. I said, you have to take your artistic vision and marry it to the heart of the market. And that's whatever your market is, you know? And that's the thing that you have to find a way to bring those two together in a way that really works for you. And I think that's the most important thing to focus on, more so than, you know,
Mhm.
trying to get like, I want more young people, or I want more, because you don't know what every young person wants. You're not going to be able to appeal to every young person. You might be able to appeal to every young person who likes romantasy, you know? So that, you see what I mean? It gives you, and so
Yeah.
let all that other stuff fall away, you know, and really think more about like the kind of books you want to write. And then what does that audience, what are they clamoring for? What do they want? What are they hungry for?
Okay. Um, Vanessa, author of The American Queen. I will announce you in the room. Thank you, Vanessa, for being here. Can you tell us what publishers normally do to help their authors make the New York Times bestseller list? It's a
Mm,
mystery to everyone.
Us too. It is. It is. Their methodology, they do not advertise what that is. And there'll be
Mhm.
times even when we are pretty sure that we're going to sell like week one at a certain level and the book won't hit, right? You know, we do not get an explanation for why it did or didn't. We can look at certain data points and, you know, kind of guess about why it happened, but no one really knows exactly how to make that happen. How? It usually happens based on volume of sales, through not just one account, but like across accounts, across, you know, Barnes and Noble, Indies, Amazon, Books a Million, Walmart, Target. There's a certain volume of sales that happen usually in that first week and can carry on after that. That means that a book can get on the list.
Mhm.
And you know, it all and there's a bunch of reasons, you know, like it can be that an author's sales have grown book over book to the point where that's the kind of volume they get, you know, when their book first publishes. It could be, you know, I mean, something explodes on Book Talk and then that's how it happens, or you get an amazing write-up in the New York Times, which, you know, you can get an amazing write-up in the New York Times and nothing happens, or you can get an amazing write-up in the New York Times and it explodes and you hit the Times list. So it really, that is what happens. It's about the volume of sales across those accounts. But
Mhm.
that can happen for a number of different, you know, reasons. And it's not the easiest thing to make happen, or we would do for
Mhm.
everything. Because it
That would
usually
be
does mean a higher level of sales that are happening, you know,
mhm.
in those weeks where it's on the list. But yeah.
Okay. We have so many questions, so I'm going to try to get through as many of these as we can.
Mhm.
From Candace. Um, as I'm in the process of querying my manuscript, I've been intentional about pitching Black agents in my first round. It's no secret there are very few in the industry. I think one of the Black agents is here in this audience. You can identify yourself in the chat. I don't want to close myself off from non-people of color agents, but I fear my voice won't truly be understood in my writing, or I'd have to water it down if I do. What would you
Mm.
say is the best way to navigate that?
I mean, I totally understand that, because there are places in my life where I'm like, I want, as soon as I walk through the door, I don't want to have to explain anything. I don't want to have to explain when I say X, what that means. I don't want to have to explain when I talk about the kitchen and my back of my neck. I don't want to explain none of that stuff. I want somebody who's already going to understand that. Um, so I think that if that's what you want, then that's what you should go for, you know. Um, when you are looking, I would say, for an agent, you also want someone who's going to understand your work. So I think it is going to be important to look at who else they represent. You know, do they represent anybody who writes the kind of thing that you write? Um,
Mhm.
do they do they do they represent one other person? 2, 3, 10. So it's important, I think, to look at who else they represent and if it aligns with what you are actually writing. Because then they're more likely to know the editors to go to who buy your kind of work, and really kind of helping like what careers within that genre, or that book club fiction or whatever, what that looks like. So you really want somebody who's very well informed and already kind of an expert in the kind of thing that you do. So I think that's a really,
Fascinating.
really important part of when you're choosing an agent and also a publisher. Like, you don't want to go with a publisher who's never done your kind of book before.
Right. Okay. From Kalia, is AI changing the landscape of publishing? Are there any pros and cons the industry has discovered?
I mean, in terms of the work that we do, no. Because there's a lot there, we're not really using, like, my job hasn't changed very much. Like, in terms of I'm the one who reads the books. I'm the one who writes the copy. I'm the one who, like, the art department still hires artists to do the covers and all this stuff. And, our readership has really shown that they care about that kind of thing. And we care about that kind of thing. Um, we work with artists, from the creation up from the book itself to the covers, etc. And we want this to be a business that supports artists. So I think it's more, for us, like, the challenge of AI is just kind of keeping up with what it's doing, and what, if it's going to be used within our business, what that looks like. And there's been a lot of conversations around that. Um, but there's not very much in terms of my day to day that has to do with AI. Um, except for, like, like, if you're using Google, like, it pretty much, like, my exposure to it is about like your exposure to it, when you're, doing your Google searches, and the AI is like, and let me summarize for you. And, so I'm like, AI is summarizing every freaking thing. But um, yeah, it's a space that has to be navigated carefully. And so there's a
Mhm.
lot of conversations that are ongoing, for us about what that looks like, and where it shows up and where it doesn't, and where we don't want it to be.
Right. So you don't want a book that's been written by AI and the author says, "Oh, isn't this a wonderful book?"
Oh no.
Um, Monica wants to know, for first-time authors, is earning out does that define a successful book, or are there other criteria that deems a book successful?
Um, I think that can
What do you
depend
consider success?
on I think that can depend on the publisher, you know. There could be, for instance, and I'm not going to touch on this too much because I don't know as much. I think, in general, publishing is a business. So earning out is always it's great. Like, everybody's always happy when you earn out. Great sell-throughs are always, like, fantastic. So I'm going to say that yes, that's really important. But at a publisher who's a commercial publisher, who publishes genre fiction like we do, one of my goals is always is aiming for that, is for, if we get to a point where we sold out, it means that we did good, and we can build on that. So I'm always looking for, whatever we get out, I want a great sell through, because I want to come back to sales and be like, look at the sell through we had. Can we grow this? Right? You can grow on those successes. So that's always, like, my goal. It is balanced with what is right for the book, what is right for the author, and a whole host of other things are taken into consideration and have to be
Mhm.
balanced at the same time while we're trying to achieve that goal. And we're in partnership with the author and agent to make that happen.
Mhm. Okay.
So at a literary house, it might be something, I don't know, like, if winning awards is something that's also really key. I mean, I'm just saying that I've never worked at a literary house, so I just pulled that out of the air as a possible likely thing that might also matter to a certain degree. Awards matter for us as well, but quite frankly, it's not something that I really put a lot of emphasis on because it doesn't have the same kind of impact um in the kind of with the kind of books that I do. So it really depends, I think, on the house and what it is they're trying to accomplish as they're building an author. But sell
Mhm.
through,
Um,
everybody's always
yeah,
happy with a good sell through.
yes, right. Rhonda McKnight, the author of The Thing About Home. Hi, Rhonda. She basically, is commenting, understanding that I have the same velocity as a white book, but it will sell if you sell it. So that's some advice from a successful author. So thank you very much
Yes.
for that.
Yes.
Manabru Hammond, hi, you've been with us all 4 weeks. Thank you so much for coming back. She asked, have you considered creating formal relationships with African American players in the publishing industry, like literary festivals, literary journals? I don't know, was that a question for Monique or were you responding to something else? I'm not quite sure. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I'm not quite sure. But if it's to Monique, have you considered creating formal relationships with African players in the publishing industry, African American players in like literary festivals, literary journals? Like, do you reach out in those areas to make those connections?
Yeah, I mean that's publishing is a business of relationships, So the it's about forming relationships with the literary agents, forming relationships with booksellers to a certain degree, with your sales force, with um, you know, sometimes with reviewers if you know them. So it is a relationship, it's a business of relationships. And I like it that way. It makes it a lot more personal and and allows you to actually have a conversation with someone, as opposed to just kind of like looking at a catalog or looking at things from a distance. Um, I personally don't do anything like haven't ventured into like trying to form any kind of like organizations or festivals or anything. I think it's a little bit outside of my skill set. But people who do those kinds of events, we do make it a business to know them, to be, because we want to pitch our authors to them. We want to have relationships with them. So because they're usually amazing support for the authors. Throw great events, give exposure, and librarians, we have events with them as well. So yes, all of those relationships are extremely important.
So with that, I will add a little tagline to you. We will be reaching out to you for our National Black Writers Conference, which
Ah,
happens in March. Since you are
excellent.
looking for partnerships and collaborating and all of that good stuff, so that would be great for you all to be a partner with us. Sponsor something,
Yep.
giveaways, etc. Maybe
Excellent.
even have some of
Yes.
your participate. So that would be great. So keep that in the back. A question
Yes.
from my former student, Charisse. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to be in the room where it happens? What are publishing companies looking for when hiring? So she's coming from not a writer's perspective, but
Mhm.
wanting to get into the publishing industry. What do you need to do? What kind of background should you have, education, etc.?
Yeah. I think, they've definitely changed up like some of the requirements, for just in terms of like level of education, et cetera, just to open the doors up even more. But I would say the first thing is we have internships. I think it's twice a year that we do internships. And I can actually, Donna, I'll find out a link for where they post that when they open up the internships. So if you want to share with people.
Okay. Mhm.
But that's a really great way to get your foot in the door, is to get an internship. There are some people who have come through like the New York, the NYU publishing program, but that's not necessary. I think getting the internship is really great. And then every publisher posts the jobs that are open, for them. So you can always check those job postings. But I love the idea of the internship. It really allows you not only to get in the door, but you kind of get the chance to kind of circulate, experience more than just one department. And you get a chance to like talk to people. Like they usually have programs built around the internship so that people who participate get as much exposure to different parts of the publishing business as possible. So it can be really cool.
Okay, good. That's good to know. So we would love that information, especially in our English department. Trisha Thomas, hi Trisha. So she says the series has been amazing. Monique, I have missed you, your voice and your energy. Thank you for your wise and inspirational insight. So that's a comment from her. Rhonda's back and she says, publishing seems to love the debut author. What advice do you have for authors who are in the mid-list, who want to bump up to the next level? And should we still be touring? Do publishers believe it works?
Yeah.
Good question, Rhonda. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I love a good debut, but also debut is another level of work. This introducing some, I love the work, but it's a different kind of work than, building someone who's establishing their career. I love doing both of those things. As far as someone in the mid list, I think if in general, regardless of where you are, you're essentially talking about like growing, being able to grow, continue to grow as an author. And I think that is a really good conversation if you have an agent to have that conversation about, okay, I really want to grow. Can we have a conversation about what needs to happen to make that happen? And they'll have that conversation with you. Your publisher, if you're already published with someone, your editor will usually be willing to have that conversation with you, And I love having that conversation when someone comes to me and is like, what do I need to grow? And I'm like, oh, okay, let's talk about it. And it really depends on, like what you're writing, what your strengths are, what are the opportunities in the market. And really, it needs to be a conversation that's geared towards what you do best and in your strengths and how those can be grown. So I think those are the conversations that you need to have in order to figure out like how you can grow and take the next step in your career. And we have those conversations all the time. And we love talking about that stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. We have basically run over time, but I don't want to let you go just yet. There was one comment Rhonda wanted to know, and I could talk about this just a little bit. Before I let you go, Monique, and I will come back to Rhonda's question. What advice would you give to aspiring Black writers and publishing professionals who want to start their careers? What advice, other than doing interns? If you're a writer, you're an aspiring writer. What do you need to do?
Okay, this is
hope and dream that.
This is gonna sound so simple, and you're gonna be like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "I'm totally serious." The thing that you need to do if you're a writer is write the book. That's what you have to do. You have to write the book, because if you're pitching, you want to be able to, especially if you're a new writer or you're moving into a new area, you pitch that book and that editor is like, that sounds amazing, send it to me. And you're like, I'll be finished in a year. That thing we want to hear, will we wait? Sure, because we don't have a choice. But if we're excited right now, you want to be able to go home and hit send on that thing. At the very least, you want to be able to hit send on like at least 150 pages, right? We're going to ask for more and you need to have been working on it, but writing the book is really important. It's also really important to be able to know how to finish a book. If you are a debut author and you're pitching something, it is not finished, we're going to say finish the book first. We're not usually going to buy a book by someone who has never written before, and because we have to know you can finish it. you know? So writing the book is really, really important. Excuse me. Beyond that, the next thing you do after you finish the book, write some more. Keep writing, you know? Hone your craft, expose yourself to things that allow and keep reading, you know, that's like one of the best ways to learn. But the the art of honing your craft is really going to serve you well, you know. Now all the other stuff, pitching, all that other networking, you can be doing all of those things, but the core thing, if you are a writer, then you need to be a writer, and you need to know how to discipline yourself on finishing something. You know, you need to discipline yourself on being able to start and finish one idea and then move on to the next idea, because that's what we're looking for. We're, you know, especially if we're not doing nonfiction, when we sign up books, we're usually doing multi-book contracts. So when you're finished with that book, I'm like, okay, when's the next book coming in? I want to know. And you have to be able to do it, you know? So I think just be active in the thing that you feel called to do, you know, and do it every day. And all the other stuff you can do too. That has to be, I think, very like central to being a writer.
Yes, thank you, Monique. Thank you so very much. This was the perfect cherry on top of this wonderful series that we've had over the past 4 weeks. And I appreciate you closing it out and all of the expertise and wisdom and humor that you have shared with us. This week, we have an amazing array of authors who are here to celebrate you as well and to listen to what you can share. So I'm really appreciative of them. Thank you everyone for being here for these past 4 weeks. We're putting the series together and editing so that we can put it on our YouTube channel. So it will be becoming available. So that's one thing. We do have, for those in the audience who are aspiring writers, or you're working on your book, or you're midlist or whatever, we do have a fiction writers workshop that will be happening beginning in October. And it is virtual, so you can join from anywhere. We have a ceiling of 20 students, and author Renee Daniel Flagler will be heading up that workshop. And that begins in October, and it runs for 4 weeks. It's in the evening. So please visit the Center for Black Literature.org, and you will get all the information about how you can register. In addition to that, the National Black Writers Conference information will be going up shortly. That is a major conversation that we have with authors over a period of 3 to 4 days. Our opening program is headed up by none other than Nicole Hannah-Jones and Michael Harriet. So we are really excited about that. And so that happens at the end of March, and that information is available on our website as well. The Center for Black Literature does so much. And one of the things that we want to continue to do is spread the word about Black literature, our writers, our poets, our artists. And so you all being here and saying, wow, this is the first time I've been here or heard about the National Black Writers Conference before. Well, now you can get out and you can spread the word, which is part of what we want to do. We will also be at the Brooklyn Book Festival, which is coming up at the end of September. And we have an event happening on September 17th, featuring Angela Dodson, Nicole Bailey Williams, and Gloria Brown Marshall, who are the contributors to We Refuse to Be Silent, Women's Voices for Justice for Black Men. So they will be in conversation on September 17th. So with that, I want to thank you all. Thank you again, Monique. Continue success and blessings to you. Continue getting the word out and supporting our authors. We're there for you. Come back to Center for Black Literature anytime, and I will be calling on you for stuff going forward. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you to all of you for being here today. This was great. This was the first time we did this series, so hopefully next summer we'll be able to do the same thing again, and we will welcome you back with open arms. So thank you and have a great.
Thank you.